Hey guys, I'm going to show you how I replaced the belt tensioner in my 2004 Toyota Corolla. So this repair applies to years 2003, I believe up to 2008. What your repair manual probably doesn't tell you is that you will have to lift your engine up just a little bit so that the lower mounting bolt on your belt tensioner clears the frame of the car. It's actually right in the way, but you'll only have to lift the engine up slightly. Anyway, I'm going to show you how I did the repair myself. Now I actually didn't have time to film me actually replacing the part. I was in a hurry and I was kind of stressed out about it and just needed to get it done. It was kind of an urgent thing. But I will show you how I replaced it, and I'll show you where all the bolts are, and I'll tell you step by step what I did.
I am not a mechanic. I am only documenting what I did to successfully do my own car repair and then sharing it with you. I will not be held liable for any damage or injury as a result of use of this video and or of following the advice and doing the steps shown in this video. Follow the steps and advice in this video at your own risk and your own liability. Only a qualified mechanic should diagnose and repair all vehicles. This video is not and should not be used as a substitute for what a qualified mechanic would say about this repair procedure.
And these are the tools you're going to need for the job. This is a screenshot from one of the Toyota Nation forums. Link is down there in the description. Okay, for your 19mm wrench, you're going to want that to be a long-handled wrench. You are going to need every bit of leverage you can get. So get yourself a nice long handle with that particular wrench. Alright, so there's your engine cover, and to the left of that, where your belt is, obviously, is your belt tensioner. You can see that silvery thing right there. Let's see if I can zoom in on it. It's kind of tight, so it's hard to film. Anyway, that's your belt tensioner right there. Now, the first thing I did was I took the engine cover off. I don't think you have to do it, but it does free up a little more space to it frees up a little more space to work down in here because it's tight enough as it is. All right, but the very first thing I did, and right there is the lower mounting bolt circled in the video. Now, it's a really long bolt, and I read that those bolts do tend to break, weaken and break. And I've read plenty of stories about those bolts breaking off inside the engine block, so you don't want that to happen. So what I did is I sprayed that bolt with WD-40, and I let it soak in, and that should help loosen the belt, make it easier to get out. But just stick a little something behind there when you spray it so you don't get WD-40 all over your hoses and lines and stuff. That's the very first thing I did, was spray that bolt with WD-40. Now you'll notice the power steering lines here kind of invade the space that you're going to be working. So what I did was there's a bolt there for your power steering reservoir, mount for the power steering reservoir, and then there's the other bolt right there. So loosen that bolt, and then just kind of tuck it out of the way a little bit, and then you've opened up some more space for yourself. And you'll notice this air conditioning line is a little bit in the way. I didn't move that. I just kind of worked around it. A little bit of a pain, but it's not too bad. It's time to slip off the belt, and I figure if I'm going to change the belt tensioner, I may as well change the belt as well. So slip the belt off. It's really easy to do. Now, you see that boss right there? I'm going to circle that in the video. You just take your wrench, you pull towards you. You pull towards the front of the car on the wrench to loosen the tension on the belt, and then you can slip the belt off. Before I loosened the bolts for the engine mount, I did actually then loosen the main mounting bolt for the belt tensioner. Because when you've got the engine raised up a little bit and you're tugging on the wrench to get that loose, you don't want to move the engine around too much. So I did that. I loosened that with the engine still firmly attached to the frame of the car. Okay, now it's time to undo the other bolt. So the second bolt, the upper bolt, right there. And you just loosen that, take that off. Next, you're going to want to unbolt the engine mount in order to lift up the side of the engine. So we're on the passenger side here, of course. There's one bolt you're going to loosen. The other bolt is there on the other side. And the third bolt is right there. You see that? Right there. You'll notice right here in the center, the blue bolt, the bolt that's spray painted blue. According to Toyota Nation, the forum on replacing the belt tensioner, you won't have to unbolt the blue bolt there. Although I didn't know that when I went to do the repair myself. I did unbolt that, and I may have caused myself a little more unnecessary work. But anyway, so there's your 3 bolts for the engine mount. You undo those and you're ready to lift up that engine, or tilt it, I should say. Now I'm going to show you how I lifted the engine up. So let's go under my car. There's the oil pan right there. That's what I used to lift up the engine, or the contact point that I used to lift up the engine. And I used a floor jack, but you don't want to just simply lift it up without putting something between the jack and the mounting contact, or the contact point. So I put a piece of wood between the lifting surface of the jack and the oil pan so that it wouldn't puncture a hole in the oil pan or do any other damage. So I used a nice broad piece of wood. Then once you have the jack positioned under there with the piece of wood on top of the jack, and you got it square on the oil pan, that main mounting bolt there should now clear the frame of the car. With that clear of the frame of the car, you just slip it out. It's a really long bolt, like I said. Okay, and you just slip the old tensioner out from there. You might have to kind of maneuver it a little bit, and like turn it a little this way. You know, you'll figure it out. Slip it out, put the new one back on. The new one actually goes on very easily. Okay, you put the new one on.
Then, before lowering the engine back to its original position, I reinstalled the main mounting bolt, the 17mm mounting bolt, for the belt tensioner. I did this before lowering the engine back because the torque wrench I was using with the socket on the end wouldn't fit over the end of it to tighten it if the engine were lowered into its original position. So I did that, reinstalled it, torqued the bolt properly, and then I went ahead and reinstalled the upper nut on the stud on the upper part of the belt tensioner. That's the 12mm. So you want to be careful since you are tugging on it with the engine jacked up. Make sure the engine doesn't shift on you when you're pulling on that wrench.
And then I lowered the engine back. Reconnected the engine mount.
All right, the next step is to prime your new belt tensioner. It's important to do this. So you want to do this now before you put the belt on and before you put your new tensioner to use. So you take your 19mm wrench, pulling on that 19mm hex nut until the tensioner's piston is fully compressed. In other words, it'll be in the belt release position. Okay, and then you slowly release the pressure on the tensioner. And then you repeat that process at least 3 times. I did that 5 times.
Then you got to get the belt on. And the belt takes a little bit of work to get that on. It's a little tricky. I found that to be the trickiest part, was getting the new belt on. And a lot of people need a second hand from someone. But I actually managed to do it on my own. Once I got everything except for the alternator alternator pulley wrapped, and then with one hand pulled forward on the wrench, on the hex boss right there, and then with the other hand, I just slipped it right on the alternator pulley. And that was it. And then put your power steering reservoir mount back, and that's it. Job done.